everybody, this is Pat Hiban, author of Tribe of Millionaires and the New York Times bestseller, 6 Steps to 7 Figures. And today on the show, we're going to talk about how literally just a few weeks ago, I bumped into Laura Ingraham from Fox News, and she had me give her a ride on the back of my bike.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence, I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. I'm your host, Dov Baron, the Dragonist, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. To find out more about me and what it is we do, go to dovbaron.com. So let me ask you, in what ways do you need to up-level your leadership? The #1 question we must all be courageous enough to ask in tough times is, did I do enough when times were good to prepare myself, my company, and those that I lead through the tough times? Invariably, the answer is no. Right now, as we record this, you're likely considering, how do we handle the crash of 2020? Well, stay tuned, because we're actually going to really dig into that. Remember, you can chat about this episode or any past episodes in our Facebook and LinkedIn groups. Simply look for the Leadership and Loyalty podcast. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you tune into podcasts. And we always need your help in staying relevant. So please get over there, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Really appreciate it. You can also catch us on traditional radio station across the United States every Monday and Thursday. With a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show, we're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also listen to us on Google Home or Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron podcast. Again, I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Do you want to live your life by your own rules, even when the feces hits the fan? Do you want to believe in the reincarnation of your economic purpose? Then you're going to love this episode. Our guest on this episode is Pat Hiban. Now, Pat Hiban is a New York Times best-selling author of 6 Steps to 7 Figures. He's the co-author of Tribe of Millionaires. He's best known for becoming the #1 in the world agent for real estate agent for ReMax, then quitting to become an asset manager for his own investments. He's heavily invested in real estate and has had several successful angel investment exits. And he knows more than a bit about doing comebacks. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome a man who in his spare time can afford to work for tips. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and welcome Mr. Pat Hiban.
Boy, that was so good. It made me want to clap. Jeez.
You're welcome, mate. Good to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
This is going to be fun. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on.
You're most welcome. So I said it in the intro there. #1 real estate guy in the world, successful angel investor, but in your spare time, you do a job where you work for tips. Tell us about that.
Well, I always believe in reincarnating myself, and I like many people, and we can talk about this or not, reached a level where I said, how much is enough? And when you have enough, what do you do? And my wife and I live in a beach resort outside of the city of Charleston, South Carolina. And I kept seeing these guys, toying people around on these little bike taxis. They're called pedicabs. Mm-hmm. You ride a bike and you got people in the back and you're talking to them the whole time and you're giving them rides to the bars or hotels. And I was like, man, I want to do that. And so she said, every time I said that, I was joking, but she said, you should. So I actually met one of the kids that did it, and he introduced me to the guy that owns a company. And so now 1 to 2 nights a week, I grab the pedicab and I go out there and I give strangers rides and I learn about them and they give me tips, and it's fun, and I stay in great shape. I get to know the city. So I'm using my mind because I'm mapping things out of my mind constantly, how to get here, how to get here. I get to use my body, and I get to be outdoors, and I'm not bored because now it's a crazy time. A lot of people we know are more bored than they've ever been in their life, because you want to, especially if you're an investor like me, you want to invest, but at the same time, you don't really want to invest right now. So it's tough.
When you said, I should do that, what was the impetus? I mean, because most people don't sit in the back of those petty cabs and go, I should do this. Most people go, oh, this is cool. Or they go, oh my God, this poor guy's working so hard. Those kinds of things. Sure. But most people don't sit back there going, I'm about to pay for this and I should do this. And I can afford not to do this, but I should do this. What the hell was the motivator?
Here's the thing. The motivator was, I've owned companies, I've had responsibilities, and I started coming to stress levels, I think, at several different junctures where I'm like, I just want to be 17 again and drive my bike to work and not have to worry about anything and not be the boss. It'd be nice not to be the boss, not to make the decisions, to just get out there and ride around and talk to people. The biggest challenge with it actually is I find myself wanting to give the guy that owns a company advice every single time I get on the bike. Like, he should change the way he schedules things. He should clean up this bathroom. He should, get a better software system, but I have to withhold myself because I know I don't own the company, and I'm not on the board of directors.
Does he know what you do?
Not really. No, I mean, he knows I had a past life. But he doesn't know. I didn't get into it with him.
So he doesn't know that you've done many things with and made your businesses very successful.
And I wanted it to be that way. So I've been a real estate agent, real estate broker, and for 30 some years, right? And part of being successful is you have to sell your soul in a sense, right? Everybody knows you, right? You have to make yourself you have to be famous locally if you want to succeed as a personal injury lawyer, a real estate agent, whatever it is, if you want to do it big. So I did it big. I had television commercials. I had a team of 50 people, and in our hometown, everybody knew who I was. And it got to the pain. It was really a pain in the butt, and I literally could not leave the house to go get milk for the kids without bumping into 4 people that would want to talk to me. And I just didn't like it anymore. And so I wanted to do something where I was anonymous, and nobody knew who I was. And I actually use a nickname when I'm pedicabbing. I don't use my real name. I don't, I just wanted to be liberated from that in a sense. And I don't know if it's right or wrong. It's not right for everybody, but I do. It's not like the only thing I do. And I certainly don't, the cash that I get is just drinking money, but I don't know how anybody could live off of that job, but anyways, it's just something I wanted to do. So I did it. So that's kind of how I've lived my whole life.
To me, because, in asking you that question, what gets revealed here is that, there is a part of us, and I think this is true with every leader I've ever worked with, that there's a part of us that wants simplicity. We want the simplicity of something. And sometimes simplicity is in the physicality of doing something. Sometimes the simplicity is in the not having to be too responsible to too many people or whatever it might be, and just to have that place of even the simplicity of anonymity, you know. So it's a really, thank you for sharing that, because I think there's some really great insights just in that answer for anybody at this point who is freaking out about 10 million things that are going on in their mind. And, you know, and as you brought it to, well, you know, there are certain things that are more important.
Yeah, and it was a struggle, to be honest with you, for 6 months before I did it, because I was insecure about it. I was like, well, what if somebody knows me, you know, or you know, what am I going to say to people, and you know, am I taking such a step backwards, you know, and but you know, it was all bullshit, you know, it's all in my head. And I just said, you know, this is something I want to do. I need the exercise. I need to get outside, because I had been working. I had a podcast, which I sold as well. And I had been working out of my house for the last 5 years. And I started to just, you know, it was just, I'm an empty nester. So I needed something to get away from my wife. I love her, but you know, we needed time apart, and I needed to get out of the house and meet people. I just love meeting people.
Sure.
And I wanted to meet real people, you know, not on computer, nothing against podcasts and this, but for 5 years, I met people on a computer.
Sure.
And I just said, I'm going to do it. And I just basically
so I've got to ask you, what is your standout story from pedicabbing? Is there a famous person or a lunatic, or, you know, anything? I mean, it begs the question. That's a great question. So, and I got a great answer for you. So, Donald Trump was in, and now bear in mind, I've only been doing this like 2 months, right? At the beginning of the year. Donald Trump came to Charleston to give a speech, and right around the Democratic primaries were on a Tuesday in downtown Charleston, and Trump came and spoke on Thursday. And so Fox News came downtown where I was working pedicabbing. I was sitting in front of the most expensive hotel in Charleston. It's like a 6-star hotel, just opened. It's called the Bennett. And a big crowd formed, and I get my news I'm like you, I'm a podcaster. I listen to the newsworthy. It's 10 minutes, all news. It's over and done. I'm not one of these guys that sits there. So I don't know all the people and the faces. So this girl comes up and she's like, hey, you know, we're filming, talking about the candidates. Do you want to get on the news? I'm like, sure. You know, I've always loved being on camera and talking, you know, and so then she waits like 20 minutes and nothing happens. So I figure out they don't need me. And then they come over, and she's like talking to the host. Her happened to be, by the way, Laura Ingraham from Fox News, called the Ingraham Angle. Mm-hmm. Every night she's on. And so they're like, should we do it? I was like, come on, get in. And like, I encouraged them to get in. All the kids that I work with are like scared to death. They don't want to answer any questions because they wouldn't know what the hell to say about politics, truth be told. No. And they're scared to death. Like, is it okay with the boss? Am I going to get fired? I'm like, come on, get in. I don't care. You don't care if I get fired.
Oh, man, they were petrified now. It's like, come on, get in. So like, she gets in. I introduce myself by my nickname, and she introduces herself as Laura, and I start pedaling the cab, and then two cameramen start running backwards, and a guy with a teleprompter starts running in front of me, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of a big deal. And then she starts asking me questions about socialism, and the guys are telling me to slow down because I'm pedaling too fast. And so I answered a bunch of questions. She liked me, and I guess, and then that was it. And then I dropped her off, and she didn't even tip me. That's a question. All the other
right there, we know a lot about Laura Ingraham.
Yeah, right there. She didn't tip me. I was like, I took her like 4 blocks, and everyone, all the other drivers were like, "Wow, how much did Fox News tip you? And I was like, they didn't tip me nothing. It's like they just jumped out, and then they went and started talking to somebody else. And I'm like, man, I was robbed. But anyways, that was funny. And they put it on. It was as soon as they opened up the segment that night, I was on the very beginning. And then at the end, she came back on and she said, oh, the funnest part of my day, the funnest part of my visit to Charleston was with that pedicab driver. So that was a good time.
That is fascinating. That is really interesting. I mean, again, there's a great example of anonymity, and you still didn't give away who
I didn't
you were.
No. I didn't have time, first of all. I didn't want to bring her into downtime. I just wanted to answer her questions. Do you believe in socialism and, that sort of thing. But yeah, no, I think she thought I was just a guy, 54-year-old dude struggling to make, money money here and there. And I think she was also fascinated. Why isn't this guy looking for socialism or whatever? Because I told her, I said, yeah, I believe in capitalism. I believe in capitalism. I said, my kids, that's another story. I was like, my kids are struggling to make ends meet, but I guess I did too at their age. So, sure. So I said they would love some free money, and she got a kick out of that. But
so who is it that we might not know, or maybe not even consider, who's been a major influence on you and on your leadership? Because in all my years of doing this, I learned a long time ago that no one does it alone. It's an illusion. The self-made man, self-made woman, self-made millionaire, it's all nonsense. Who is someone who has really had a massive impact on you? And again, like I said, it might not be anybody we know.
Yeah, probably. Well, so I can go with cliches. I mean, I've had mentors. The mentors we tend to remember the most, I think, are ones when we're like 25 or 23 years old, when we're just starting to realize that maybe I should listen to somebody older than me. Right. And I've written in my book about a couple that I've had, but I think the ones that make the biggest difference are the ones that stick with you. I have a friend, David Osborne, and another friend, Tim Rode, who I've known for 2 decades. And we've kind of always, had each other's backs in an accountability sense and in a growth sense where, if one of us said, when I turn 50, I want to be really fit, the other one would say, yeah, me too. Right. And then we would start comparing body fat. And I think it's just things like that. Like I want to have, 50 lines of horizontal income, like income that comes sideways, like rental properties and companies and stuff. And the other one would be like, I want to have 60. Whatever the thought would be, we would kind of always try to compete and not in a bad way, but in a good way, and keep each other accountable. And I think that's had a huge influence on me being able to be financially free and really quit any sense of normal life. Like, just like a lot of people, I just sold my podcast, right? And I did it for 5 years. I had 850 guests on. I put a lot of work into that. But when I was done, I was like, what? I don't need this. I don't want it. I'm tired of it. Just sell it. And I wouldn't have been able to do that, I think, if I hadn't had all these other backups. Mm-hmm. And I think David Osborne and Tim Rode both have allowed me, and consciously we've contributed in making sure that every year we added 2 or 3 more rental properties, commercial buildings, angel investments, constantly throughout the year, so that now at 54, I'm like, well, shit, I got 50 of them. So, I don't need a 51st one that requires, 25 hours of work a week. I don't want that one. I'll get rid of that one. I'll still have 50,
Right. So, in many ways, what you're talking about there is building a support system. One of the things I've often said to people is, do you have a support system or do you have a mutual complaining system? And a lot of time,
that's good.
Yeah, a lot of time it's people just getting together to bitch, moan, and complain, and feel sorry for each other and themselves, as opposed to what you're talking about. There seems to be very much about contributing to each other, challenging each other to step into the next level, and creating a healthy competition to push and hold each other accountable. Do you figure that that's a big part of your success?
Yeah, I really have no patience. There's people that I know who, while I'm with them, will watch videos of other people that they know complaining, whether it's their husband or their wife or whatever, complaining about some stupid thing. Like, it's his fault that this happened, rather than just dealing with it, right? Or fixing it. And I really have no pay. I couldn't even watch a 2-minute video of somebody complaining, to be honest with you. I'm like, here's the thing, Duff. I've unfortunately, I've lost friends because I don't have the gene to understand why people don't fix things in their lives. For instance, friends with problems, and whether it be anger management, right? Or mental issues, like, any mental issue, without getting in specifics. Well, listen, if you're having problems with that, go see a shrink. I mean, I've in my 54 years, I've had 3 different times where I've had used a shrink to get over humps or to get through things. So I'm like, dude, you have a problem. Go see a shrink, get it worked out. You know what I mean? I'm not your shrink. Or alcohol addictions, right? Like, you need to go to rehab. I've told friends you need to go to rehab, and they've hung up on me.
Sure.
I've told friends, that have called me and been like, dude, I got laid off. And I'm like, listening to the story. And this is a true story, unfortunately. This guy my friend of mine was telling me how he got laid off, quote unquote, And what happened was he really got fired, right? Because he did a shitty job.
Right.
And he was a salesperson, and he wasn't selling enough. And he wasn't selling enough because he was dorking around on social media and going to Hooters for lunch at noon or whatever. And I said, you didn't get laid off, you got fired.
Right.
Get a grip. You know what I mean? This is the reality. And, lost him.
But that is the distinction between truly successful people and none. Number 1, absolute accountability. And number 2, the commitment to fix whatever it is that needs to be fixed in order to be better. And oftentimes that is the stumbling block, is lack of accountability, and then the wanting to blame somebody else and therefore not do anything about it. Pat, this is a great conversation. I want to come back and talk about your philosophy around how to come back from the crash, and what we can do about that. But first, let's just take a little break and pay the bills. This episode of Leadership and Loyalty is brought to you in part by my other podcast, Curiosity Bites. Curiosity Bites is the answer to the question, how can we bring people together who completely disagree? This is exactly what your mind and your soul have been craving. It's a chance for you to sit in on real and sometimes intense conversations with some of the world's most interesting people, including astronauts, neuroscientists, philosophers, holy people, quantum physicists, skeptics, entrepreneurs, entertainers, and even some folks you might have thought were a-holes who are truly fascinating. Simply go to dovbaron.com, that's DOVBARON.com, and you can find out how you can sink your teeth into an episode of Curiosity Bites. It is fascinating. All right, welcome back. I am here with my guest. He was the #1 real estate agent in the world for ReMax. He is an angel investor. He runs his own investment company. He manages his assets. He's a guy who has come back. And before the break, we were talking about taking accountability, how to do that, what that is, and setting yourself up with a bunch of people who don't hold you to misery, but actually hold you to a higher standard. And that's a really important thing. So let's talk about handling this crash.
Yes.
Because this is very real. As we record this right now, the coronavirus is epidemic. It's across the world. Many parts of the world are on complete lockdown. Depending on where you are, I was speaking to one of my clients yesterday who was close to where you are in the East Coast, and he seems pretty casual about it. I speak to my family or some of my family in New York, and they're in complete lockdown, cannot move, except to leave the house to go get groceries and pharmacy. So it's all very intense. And at the same time, the wheels of the economy are starting to really slow down. Yes, there was a stimulus package approved. And yes, that helped the stock market a little. But is that a Band-Aid? What's your thoughts on where we're at and how we can come back?
Well, the stimulus package is interesting. I mean, I haven't read the whole thing, or I just heard little tips, bits and pieces of it. I like the idea of a $5,000 per employee. I think that's part of it, $5,000 per employee thing where if you haven't laid people off yet, and that now, granted, I know several people. A good friend of mine has a bus company, right? Bus and limousines, and he laid off 135 people last week. Mm-hmm. If he knew about this stimulus coming, he might have been able to keep all of them for at least a month. But I really don't think a month is going to make a difference in an industry such as luxury rentals. And he does luxury rentals for casinos and things, and like buses. And I don't think people are suddenly going to flock to casinos after a month. I think they're going to have to do another stimulus package if he's not going to lay off those 100. If he weren't to lay off those 135 limo drivers. So I think it's a long-term thing. I know a lot of real estate people. That's been a lot of my life, and they have not seen the worst of it. I mean, people now, they can't show houses. They can't do open houses. Nobody wants to put their house on the market because there's no buyers. It's like having an auction with nobody there. Mm-hmm. I don't think a month is going to do it. I think people are going to decide, let's put our search on hold. Let's put selling on hold because I lost so much money in my 401k, because I'm insecure about my job, because the guy that used to sit next to me got fired or laid off or furloughed or whatever you want to call it. I think it's going to have a resounding effect for at least through the end of the year for most businesses. And the fascinating thing is, Dov, there are businesses out there. Like, I'll give you an example, like my buddy's limo business. And I'm also good friends with a dentist. He laid off 17 people on Friday.
Yep.
He laid off his entire staff. He gave all his gloves. He gave all his masks to the hospital, and he just shut the doors. A dental practice. It was making big money.
Yeah.
And it would have totally made big money until he sold it one day. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it was a lot of cash flow. Yep. And there was no reason. It wasn't like he was fiscally irresponsible. It wasn't like, he didn't have enough in the bank. He didn't supervise his employees right. He did a bad job fixing teeth. It was none of that, right?
No.
Everything would have been great if this hadn't happened. So it's not his fault, and it's not the limo guy's fault either. And there's all these companies where these people have big houses. They have lots of cars, they have great clothes, and they got all this stuff, but the cash flow is all of a sudden stopped. It's not a rainy day, it's a rainy quarter. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know if America has money saved up for a rainy quarter.
Well, I mean, we know, not my opinion, research was that the average American is $400 away from a financial crisis. That $400 was spent last week.
Yeah.
Right. So that was last week. Now we're in this week, and then there's next week, and probably many weeks to come. What are you saying to people like your friend the dentist, who did nothing wrong, is actually not even in a business that is luxury? It's a business that has some level of essentials to it. What do you say? What do you think? What do you imagine the conversation is with them in 18 months? Because they went out of business, not because of anything they did that was wrong, but because they just couldn't maintain, and they just, everything went towards everything else.
Well, I think the number one lesson out of this, and it's unfortunate you even have to go to what do we learn from this, but that two lessons. First of all, I see this has pushed us into the future. Yep. It's totally here's the thing, telemedicine wasn't accepted by insurance before this. Why not? Because it was a stupid, antiquated thing. They were taught that you needed to see people face to face. Now Trump says you have to accept telemedicine, which is great. It's better, right? Why do I need to go see you and have risk getting sicker, right? It's pushed it into the future. So I think what's going to happen is the same thing's happening with people's jobs. Instead of having this huge area of commercial space where you have all these people come in, after 2 or 3 months of this, people are going to be like, you know what? I could save money by not renewing my lease. And so it's putting in cost saving measures that people didn't believe existed, but they actually do exist. And it's pushing us into the future that way. So that's a good thing that it's created. On the bad side or the good side, it's let us know that we're terrible savers, and that,
weren't we supposed to, I'll rephrase that. Weren't we supposed to learn that after 2008, 2009?
Yeah, but we didn't, did we?
No, but so why do you assume we're going to learn it now? I don't assume that at all. If we come out of this, people are going to go, okay, I got to do some things. And of course, there'll be some caution around spending initially, and people will be a little more tighter with their finances, because that's what always happens post recession. And then there'll be some level of boom, and people will then start trying to build, and they will put everything they have into it. One of the things I've been talking about recently is that, in the world of hustle, which we've all been living in for the last 10 years, right? You got to hustle, hustle, hustle. Yeah. And what you've got is, more than anything, you've had the economy has been built. The American economy has been built by the all-in entrepreneur, not by big business, but the all-in entrepreneur. And the all-in entrepreneur lives literally paycheck to paycheck. Their paychecks may be $1 million a month, but they're putting it all back in. They're always constantly recycling and growing their business. And they're all in, what I call all-in entrepreneurs. And those guys have now had the brakes put on everything, and the money's still going out. So I don't know that we will learn, because I think that the US, North America, and many parts of the first world are very entrepreneurially driven. And we're just going to come back and try and do better and make more. And that's part of the problem. I know I've been guilty of it.
I think you're right. And I think that, that the reality of it is, there's a great quote that I'll never forget it was in the Economist magazine. It said, capitalism without bankruptcy is like Christianity without hell. And I think that people are, need to realize, a lot of these people with businesses now have never had a downturn, and the people are going to realize that part of the game, part of the game of capitalism is bankruptcy, right? And this black swan is not going to be a black. It's going to come around again, right? There's going to be another epidemic, another pandemic, right? And it's going to we're going to have to go through the same procedures again. There's going to be knock on wood, I don't want to be the one that says this, but there's going to be terrorist attacks. There's going to be stuff that happens that if you're going to be a capitalist and you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to think about, because you're going to spend all this time. And I've known people personally that have done this in my family, lifetimes of work in this stuff that just gets swept away in a, blink of an eye, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And people look back and like, I put all that effort, I put all that life into that company, and I thought I was going to sell it for $100 million one day, and now it's bankrupt, selling for book value or whatever. It's sad, but this is going to be interesting a year from now to look back on this. And the April 2020 is going to be a date that a lot of people remember as to like how it changed things. So
given your crystal ball, we'll just rub the top of your head.
Right.
There you go. So you're looking back, this is over. You've been in business a long time. You've done some great investments. You've had a lot of success. Looking back, this is over. What are you saying to somebody who maybe went down the toilet and is, still entrepreneurially spirited, but obviously a little shell-shocked?
Yeah.
What would you be saying to them? Because as we talked about before, we've been through this before. We had 2008, 2009. We had 1987. We even had, as you mentioned, we had 2001 with because of 9/11. Each one of those were a hard hit on the economy, and different hits in different ways for different reasons. But what would you say to somebody as we come out of this on the other side?
Yeah, that's fascinating. First of all, I think, and this kind of leads to a conversation, and I'm sure you've thought of this and had this before. Do you think, Dub, that there per capita more entrepreneurs now than there were before 2008?
Oh, absolutely, I do. And the reason I do is because of millennials. And what I mean by that is that I know from the research that millennials tend to be entrepreneurially minded because they saw their fathers, their mothers who worked for a company for 20 years get wiped out of a job and suddenly realized, oh, we can't trust big business. So they were in middle school and went, I better come up with an idea where I don't have to rely on a boss. So yeah, I think there's way more entrepreneurs now than there was.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's huge, right? And with Shark Tank on the popularity of Shark Tank and stuff like that on TV, and there's so much innovation. Everybody's like, they want to invent something, an app, right, or a company. And I think this is going to make a lot of people rethink that, are you really an entrepreneur? Are you is entrepreneurship a nature nurture thing? I think it's a nature thing, right? I think you're born with it. People will disagree, but I think really a lot of entrepreneurs aren't cut out to be entrepreneurs, and this is going to weed them out big time, I think. But also, I agree with you when you say, why didn't anybody learn their lesson in the last crash? One of the reasons is it may have recovered too fast.
That's interesting.
And for too long, it did recover really fast. There should be a period of flatness, with any S curve. It shouldn't be V. It should be more like a U,
Why do you say that? Do you think we'd learn better that way?
I do, yeah. And it should be harder, and it should be more normal. It shouldn't be, and I think our government has interjected themselves and become so sensitive to the people being happy, or the people's financial well-being or the stock market or whatever, which, rather than telling them, hey, stuff happens, you got to suck this up. This is normal in my opinion. I mean, think about the 90s, right? All through the 90s, it was flat. There was nothing going on with the stock market, with the real estate market, nothing. From like 1990 to like 98, it was like 9 years of just total flatness. It was hard, but it was normal, right? People weren't dying or anything. I mean, you know what I mean? It was people still had jobs. I was a real estate agent. I still made a decent amount, but I couldn't kill it, like you could, after that, really.
Right.
It's interesting.
We are definitely in very interesting times, and it will hopefully wake all of us up a little bit into many different things. But I think that more than anything, this is a time now where we are being brought back to what really matters. I mean, my work as the Dragonist is about finding the meaning, and the deepest meaning, the fire in your belly. And I think that it is situations like this that often bring people to that. The work of being a purpose-focused organization has become quite popular in the last 5 years. But it's, I've said many times that it's a lick of paint for a lot of people. It's a lick of paint on top of their mission statement. That's not a purpose. You find your purpose in your pain. You find your purpose in your struggle. You find your purpose when the feces hits the fan. And right now, that's what's happening for so many people. And they're being brought back to, well, what do I really care about? And I think it's going to be very hard and very tough. And I feel great sadness for many people I can think of, and potentially for all of us. But it will bring us back to what matters. What really matters is going to be quite surprising, because the stimulus package of giving people $1,200 as a one-time check, that's a terrible idea.
If you made less than 99,000.
Yeah, if you made less than 99,000, right? Giving people the few grand for employees, great, but that won't last. So,
that's temporary, yeah.
So all these are Band-Aid responses to a tsunami. That's like, saying, oh, there's a tsunami coming, here's a bucket. Good luck with that.
Right. I think you're right. I mean, on some level, it all points towards, certainly it points towards much more of a socialist society, which again, it goes back to, which is not necessarily a bad thing. No. If it makes people happy, it goes back to what you're saying is, where people are going to find their passion, find their, what they're really meant to do, which means, you know what, I owned a pizza shop and I worked 12 hours a day, and I was making $250 a year profit, and everything was getting neglected, but I was making a ton of money. And then I lost it all because the pizza shop closed for 6 weeks. I'm never going to do that again, ever.
Right.
I want to be a high school guidance counselor. I've always wanted to be a high school guidance counselor. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to be happy with it. And I think you're going to see more and more of that. I
fully agree. I think you're going to see more of that. It's interesting because this whole debate around socialism has been a big conversation for the last 5-6 years. But here's what's interesting is if you look at places that are brought up as socialist examples, they're not truly socialist, but socialist examples of places like, Sweden and Finland and those kinds of countries, right. The Nordic countries. And when you do the research into those countries and you ask people about their purpose in life, it is rarely associated to their career. In our culture, we think of it as only career. Yeah. They don't think of it that way. They do their jobs. They usually like the work they do, but they have a purpose, a passion, a mission, whatever one wants to call it, and that usually doesn't involve getting paid. It usually involves being of service in some way. No, I agree. That, and like I said, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that I mean, I think we're gonna reach some sort of balance
We have to it's a whole nother conversation. We have to with artificial intelligence, right? There's going to be less and less jobs. We just know it's kind of like how all this has pushed us into the future with commercial real estate space, right? Like people are going to be like, I don't need this damn space, right? Or having to see people face to face is pushed education, pushed us into the future. Is it really important to have these huge campuses pushing us into the future? The same thing is going to happen, with our socialist society, or our society is going to have to push into the future, which equals more of a socialist culture, in my opinion, just because there's going to be less jobs, and just because the millennials don't care as much, or whatever. The younger generation doesn't care as much about house space, vehicles, things. They care more about events and trips, similar to the Norwegians and the Swedes and whatever, hobbies.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're in for a very different time. I think that human beings don't like change. That's across the board. And I think that we all cling to what we know, but we are headed into a very different time. And as much as everybody's trying to get back to, quote, normal, I think that very clearly normal as we've known it is done. That's gone. And there's a new normal. And I don't know what that is yet. None of us do. And we can choose to be frustrated by that. We can choose to be upset by that, or we can choose to grow from it. And yes, I think, Andrew Yang was talking about universal income.
Yeah. I heard that word again this morning, actually, on a podcast. So,
universal income.
Universal income, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was $1,000 a month for every American, and suddenly Republicans are talking about these kinds of things.
It's funny. You know what, Dov? I just got back from Cuba, like literally 2 weeks ago. And the fascinating thing about Cuba was there was no homeless people. There was no like massive despair, heroin addictions, things like that. So there was no bottom because they get a certain amount. And there were lines outside of my hotel to get like milk, soy milk, actually, because unfortunately they're running out of cows. I mean, it's kind of sad, but and there's tons of stuff wrong, right? I mean, they all would love to have more money and love to have opportunity. Don't get me wrong. But the point is, they didn't have that bottom that we have. And you felt safe. Like literally I walked out of our hotel that I was paying $350 a night for and sat down in a park with about 6 old guys and just started trying to talk to them about politics and things like that. And I ended up buying him a bottle of rum for $8 at the corner store. And we sat there and drank rum out of paper cups and chatted and got to know each other as much as we could. There was a little language barrier, but some of them spoke English. And my point is they were just happy, right? There's these old guys. They're like 65, 70. They get together every Friday and they just sit there and hang out and drink rum and in the park and don't bother nobody. And, they were comfortable in their old age. And
but one of the things about it is I've described it as an adjustable wrench, right? An adjustable wrench goes like this. If you want it to get wider, it gets wider at the top and at the bottom. So as you get a higher level of income and a higher level of potential for wealth, you also get a deeper level of desperation and poverty and loss. And more people can fall through the cracks. And so when you have a socialized or socialistic system, that band is much narrower. Now that is frustrating to the entrepreneurially minded or capitalistically minded person. Of course, I understand that. But you've also created that safety net for your population that just wouldn't have been there. And that's what we're seeing in many of those countries. It's as you said, it's going to be very interesting watching this forward. moving on a little bit, I just wanted to go to this because I think it's something interesting. I have for years said that I don't believe the negative hype on this thing, and that is that people talk about obsession as a negative thing. I don't see it as a negative thing. I've learned that the most massively successful people I've known, and let me be clear, and I've said this many times, I don't see success as just financial. I see it in many, many ways. What are you obsessed with? And how has it led you to deeper levels of success in a broad spectrum of that word?
That's a fascinating question. I have been called by, people obsessive, especially my wife. And it's a word that I do believe is a positive word, but I also believe it's a negative word. Sure. And I think it could cause just as much harm as it can cause good. So I would say, yeah, it's great. I mean, I think when you're 25 years old, you should be obsessed with doing one thing and doing one thing really well and making as much money as you can and saving as much as you can, in my belief structure. If you want to be financially successful. A lot of people don't want to be financially successful. They want to be, but they don't want to be obsessed, right? They'd rather be obsessed about fantasy football or whatever, here's the thing. That's the one that I've battled with my whole life, because you could, if you're too obsessed, you're going to lose your wife, you're going to lose your family, you're going to lose, you know what I mean? On some level, maybe not completely, but on some level, relationships that go bad, you're going to hold grudges. There's a lot of downsides to obsessions. I know some people that are obsessed now with coronavirus. Mm-hmm. They're trying to get tests and they're not even sick.
Right.
Or there, a couple of people I saw online this morning are like, yeah, I can get a test from China, or I can get a ventilator from China. And I'm like, well, you're not even sick yet, so it could be, it can be very bad. At some point you have to just let things go, you know what I mean? And just not overthink it. You give it a certain amount of time to think through it. It's hard, man. I love it and I hate it. I'm not a good one to ask this because I'm very, depending on the day, I can tell you either answer. But, I guess today, what am I obsessed with, to answer your question? I love money. I'm always the thing that I've always been consistently obsessed with is counting my money. I count my money all the time. I'm looking at my net worth statement. I log on to my bank account, even though I know that no checks have cleared. I log in and look at it daily. I'm always thinking about what to invest in next. I think about it so much that, I sell things and I buy things because I have to keep moving, and sometimes I fit square pegs in round holes. Truth be told, just because I need an endorphin hit to invest, to wire money to an investment. But I think because I think about it, I tend to make more good decisions rather than bad.
What's the outcome for you, Pat? You talked about the adrenaline, but what's the outcome beyond that? I mean, there's the obvious accumulation of wealth, but what's the real outcome?
Freedom. The exterior of my success is just the freedom that is created, where I've been able to move. I finally was able to move after living my entire life, 49 years in one town, to a whole nother state where I knew no one. And it gave me the freedom to do that and just do whatever I wanted to. So that's the outcome of that. And then with that freedom, I'm a lot more creative. I'm a lot more liberated. I'm a lot healthier. I'm working out more.
Well, I guess your biking is,
Yep, that helps. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
but that's now gone into the background because you won't be out doing that right now.
No, no one wants a ride.
No.
No one wants a ride. So, and the bars are all shut down. So, yeah, there's no rides there. But yeah, but whatever. I mean, it's freedom. I think at the end of the day, what people really want is they want freedom, right? They want the freedom that money brings. Mm-hmm. So, if you could set up a plan where, when I was 21, 22 years old, when I got out of college, I was not obsessed about anything. I should say I was not passionate about anything. I didn't want to change the world. I didn't know anything about politics. I didn't know anything about finances. I didn't know, all I knew is I wanted to make a lot of money. And real estate just happened to show up in my universe. I'd never said, oh, I love houses, never paid attention to, oh, isn't this a great kitchen or whatever. I have no attention to detail. I have no flair for decorating, nothing, wasn't that agent, Right. I just wanted to sell houses. And for several decades, that's what I did. And luckily I was also obsessed about saving money. And I think that our society lacks that obsession. Obviously people are almost unobsessed about saving money, Oh, I don't need it. I always have a job. Well, I'll never be able to say that now,
No. So Pat, as we come to the end of the show, one of the things I'd like to finish with is practicality. So if you were going to share something that our listeners, our viewers can take away as a real practicality, what is the one thing that you would have them get so they can put in action what it is that we've talked about?
A group of people that can keep you accountable, whether they're keeping you accountable for losing weight or saving money or doing something that you love, or even if you want to take it to passion, for instance, my wife just signed up for a women's only carpentry camp. She's always loved fixing stuff, but she's never taken it to the next level. I'm sending her away to camp, to women's only carpentry camp. A group of people that are going to push you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. That's what you need. You need to find people that are going to push you and keep you accountable no matter what it is. Right. And that's why we wrote the book Tribe of Millionaires, which we haven't talked about yet, but it's the same concept of having a mastermind, a group, a practical group. It's free, right? Knowing people that you could talk to about anything is free, and they're going to keep you motivated. Family, it's hard because everybody comes out, their DNA is so different in family, at least in my experience. And we tend not to listen to our parents, right? We tend to do the opposite of what they say. But when somebody that's not in your family is telling you, it's actually real advice, most likely, if they're a successful person.
Yeah, there is a natural rejection of those who are advising us, who are, familial. As a very good friend of mine said, why don't you just tell them what I would tell them? Because they'll listen to you.
It's so true.
Me, right? And it's a psychological process. It happens for all of us. My kids will listen to the advice of somebody else saying exactly what I said, and their kids will listen to me, but they won't listen to them. We're saying the same thing.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a great piece of practical advice, is to get yourself around a tribe of people who will hold you accountable, not just blow smoke up your skirt and not just tell you how wonderful you are, but actually hold you accountable to becoming a better leader, a better human being in every possible way. Pat, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. I thank you for that and for all that you've shared with all of your experience. Would you do us a favor and please tell our audience where they can find out more about you and all your wonderful resources?
Yes, well, I'm lucky, very lucky in that, as far as I know, I'm the only Pat Hiban, Hiban, in the world until someone just decides to take the name. So I'm very easy to find social media wise and everything. Be careful because, like I said, I sold my podcast. So part of the contract that I signed was I gave them some of my social media accounts, which are my name, but you can find me there. The one way to read, of course, you can go to Amazon. You get either my books, Tribe of Millionaires or 6 Steps to 7 Figures. But I am offering a special on the Tribe of Millionaires book, which just came out. If you go to tribeofmillionaires.com, that's tribeofmillionaires.com, you get a free copy. All you got to do is pay the shipping, $7. Get a copy, read it. Then you'll find out more about me. You'll know where to follow me and all that stuff. It's all in there.
So tribeofmillionaires.com and pathiban.com.
That's good.
Good. We will send people to both of those places. It's been a pleasure and honor, sir. I hope that you'll stay with us till the end. We want to thank you for all that you shared, and please get yourself over to tribeofmillionaires.com or pathiban.com. You can hang out and listen with other conscious leaders about this episode or any past episodes by simply going into our Facebook or LinkedIn groups, which are under Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. It doesn't matter how successful you are. If you, your employees, your customers don't understand what gives your company meaning, you're only working at a fraction of your capability. To find out how you can hire me, Dov Baron, as a speaker or a leader strategist for yourself or for your organization, go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. Because unified meaning, or as we call it, finding your dragonfire, is the one single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all companies and individuals. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you've been pushed into the future, not to crush you, but to elevate you. I'm Dov Baron, and here to assist you tapping into your dragonfire to reach the next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.